Hi, this video is a continuation of completing the square to solve quadratic equations, and this is part 2, how to solve quadratic equations if it's not just x squared but there's a number in front of the x squared. So you can see in this equation here this time we have 2x squared. So how do we use completing the square in order to do that? Okay, so let's have a little look at this question. So to solve the equation 2x squared minus 8x plus 3 equals 0 by completing the square. Now this time it says give your answers to 2 decimal places rather than leaving your answer as an exact value. So we do not need to leave it as a surd. We can just put it all into the calculator to work out our final answer. Now, I've got the same steps as the previous video, just copied here at the side, just to help us out as we're going through. But this time, there's actually an extra step before all of this. So I'm going to call this the prequel step. If I can spell. So in this case, 2x squared minus 8x plus 3. We can't actually solve this by completing the square at the minute because this has got a 2 in front of the x squared. Completing the square actually only works for expressions and equations that have a single x squared. Now that doesn't mean we can't complete the squared, it's just more complicated. But in this case it's not too bad because we're just simply going to get rid of this 2 to solve. Now this 2 is multiplying with x squared. So if we want to get rid of a multiply by 2, we're actually going to half the entire equation, both the left and right hand side of the equation, in order to get rid of it. Okay, so when I half it, I end up with just x squared. Half of minus 8 is minus 4x, and half of 3 is 1.5. Okay, now half of 0 is just 0, and our equation can still be solved because our quadratic is still equal to 0. So that's actually the previous step, the sort of secret step that you do before you can then complete the squares by making that single x squared. So you need to do a divide. Sometimes it might be a times because it might be a half x squared to create a single x squared. Okay, now we're going to complete the square. So remember, just to keep in mind, we are trying to make it in the form of x plus a squared plus b equals 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my coefficient of x and I'm going to half it. So that means a is equal to minus 2. And that means my bracket is going to be x minus 2 squared. Okay, so that's that first step. Now, the second step, we want to subtract that a squared. So I want to subtract minus 2 squared and then add back on this 1.5 to the end of my expression. So I want to add 1.5 and it's still equal to 0. Okay, now I've completed that square quite quickly. If you need a reminder of how to complete the square, please watch some of the previous videos to remind yourself how to do that. Okay, so I've done that step there, and I've done add the constant back, and now I'm going to simplify. So x minus 2 squared, and minus 2 squared is 4, negative, so this is going to be negative 4, and we want to add 1.5 to that, so that's going to take me to minus 2.5. Okay, and that's all still equal to 0. And now we are on to the solving step, step 5. Rearrange to make x the subject. So remember, treat this entire bracket like an unknown. And we are going to get rid of this to subtract 2.5 by doing the inverse. So add 2.5 to both sides. So now I have x minus 2 squared equals 2.5. Okay. Now I'm going to do the inverse of squaring. So I'm going to square root. I'll square root both sides. So now I've got x minus 2 equals the square root of 2.5. And remember, there's a positive value and a negative value. Now my next step, getting rid of the negative 2 by adding 2 to both sides. So now I've got x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 2.5. Now, if the question said leave your answer as an exact value, then this would be my final step. But because the question says give your answer to 2 decimal places, that means we now need to put the put the calculation into a calculator. Now, there are going to be 2 answers. There's going to be the 2 add square root 2.5 for our first value of x, and then our second value of x, which will be 2 subtract square root 2.5. And then we'll put this into the calculator to work out our answer. So the first solution, x is going to be 3.58, and our second is going to be 0.42 to 2 decimal places. And that will be our final solutions to the equation 2x squared minus 8x plus 3 equals 0. Use this video to help you to complete the knowledge organizer and have a good try. Thank you.